This is Conversations with Women in Sales, an award-winning podcast created by Barbara Giamanco, who hosted the first 67 episodes. Listen to interviews with amazing women about their journeys in their sales careers, often discussing sales leadership tips, ideas, and strategies. We aim to inspire women to consider a sales career and for some women to grow into sales leadership. Men, we appreciate your allyship. And now, your host, Lori Richardson.
Big shout out to our official sponsor, Reprise, the leading full funnel, product-led growth platform. With Reprise, your sales team creates, presents, and shares product demos, perfectly customized for each step of your sales motion. Go to getreprise.com/womenInSales to try for free today. I'm here today with Mandi Graziano. Mandy is the author of a new book, which I have right here. It's called Sales Tales, The Hustle, Humor, and Lessons from a Life in Sales. And Mandy is also the VP of Global Accounts at Hospitality Performance Network. She's been in the hospitality industry for a while, which we'll talk about. And Mandy, it's so great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat with you.
Yeah, it's great. I'm always curious. And I've heard another podcast episode with you where you were talking about your childhood. So I want to mention that too, because we have some parallels. First of all, I want to say that the very first sentence in your book is something that I totally can relate to. You said, sales is not a dirty word. That's the very first one. And I talk to young women at colleges and universities, even high schools, and we talk about the fact that sales is admirable, that sales is a real profession. Business to business selling is real. The guys hid it from us for a long time. And you can have such an amazing career in sales. And like you, I started on straight commission. But I've had all sorts of little things going on when I was little. What did you have?
Oh, geez. Well, so sales is not a dirty word. And I'm with you. And I agree. I think people tried to hide that from us. And I actually lied about my first sales job I had because I was embarrassed because it was sales. I told everybody I was an account executive. And then when I got more and more comfortable with it, I was like, I'm doing sales and it's awesome. It's really awesome. It's strategic and it's business. And I feel like a badass. So yeah, it's sales. So I relate to you in that. And then I want to hear your kid's story. So when I was a kid, my little sister and I were 16 months apart. So basically, Irish twins or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And we were just attached at the hip, grew up in Ohio, kind of bored. And we would just load up our little wagon and take it. We would pick flowers out of our neighbors' yards and sell them their flowers. And maybe
I love that.
we just thought it was cute, but we really thought we were like presenting something awesome. And that's what we did for fun. Like other families did other things, but my little sister and I just loaded up our wagon and walked up North Gateway Drive and sold things, old blow dryers and used lipstick. I don't know why anybody would buy it, but there was some magic there for us to see what we could sell and like collect our earnings at the end and presenting it. I remember my little sister and I were always like cleaning everything up and making sure it was presented really pretty in the wagon. So that was like early merchandising. We didn't even know we were doing. What about you? What were your childhood sales?
The first thing, I think the first thing I remember is having a lemonade stand, but I was on a dead end street. So we had to use word of mouth referrals.
Okay.
A lot about word of mouth and learned a lot about having a good product and a good brand. And from there, I made Christmas ornaments that I would sell at my grandmother's clothing store. And I did macrame and did all sorts of different things. And then I worked for my grandmother, which is how I got my first role model who my grandmother had this amazing women's apparel store and never discounted other than two times a year. And I just learned so much without knowing I was being taught and learned all about sales, about the need to not have to discount and how to really build a brand and how to champion and how to network and how to really get consistent customers on an ongoing basis. And it was really incredible. But yeah, I did. We were always scheming or having a fundraiser for muscular dystrophy to get rid of muscular dystrophy, or something. Selling Girl Scout cookies, that was another thing.
Yeah, we sold those. And then the parish picnics for the church, we were always selling something for a fundraising. So I remember putting my arm in that cotton candy machine, like all the way up, just swirling that cone around. I was so sticky head to toe, but it was a fundraiser for cheerleading and softball. And you're just trying to get people to buy cotton candy. So I totally relate. I relate to that. And I think I started the book with, sales isn't a dirty word. And I live by that because I think we are all selling all the time. I think about my mom, right? My mom, 4 kids, getting kids fed and out the door. Like there's just selling in everything we do. We just have to get comfortable with it, and know that it's okay. It's okay to sell something. You don't have to push it on people. You're just educating somebody on something they might need.
Yeah. And we're comfortable when we're kids because
Yeah.
but why? But why? But why? But why not? So it's at some point we lose that. And I'm just, I can't believe that the negative connotations of sales still stick with sales because, there hasn't been a movie made like Boiler Room in a while. There hasn't been used car salesmen doing what they used to do for a while. And I'm hopeful that we get rid of that, especially as we get more women into B2B sales and leadership. So, there's still hope.
I think there's a lot of hope. And I think there's also another way to look at it. Like I have 4 nieces and their age ranges is 9 to 22. And so the 22-year-old just graduated college right now. So she's considering how is she going to sell herself to get a job. And the 18-year-old just graduated high school and she's considering like, how do I sell myself to get some additional scholarships? And so, and my the other one's a nurse. And she's, how do I sell this patient to take the meds? So I think, as I see them grow, they inspire me all the time. They're selling and not even knowing it. And I think we have to really look at it as like, there's a competition, right? Like the competitive spirit of business. And there's so much strategy behind selling that I think if you can sink your teeth into something tactical or strategic as a young woman, then you probably can be an awesome salesperson, without knowing you're an awesome salesperson.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you went to college, you went to the University of Toledo, what did you think you were going to do when you graduated? Did you have any idea? And how did you get into that first hospitality role?
I had no clue. In fact, when I first started college, I thought I was going to be a special ed teacher. I thought I was going to be an educator, which is what I originally wanted to do. And then I had to declare a major and a minor. I was really good at speaking Spanish. So I declared international relations. I'm not sure. I just went with it. But I really learned about hospitality through some of the organizations that I was involved with in college. I was involved with the Pan-Hellenic Council in my sorority. I was involved with Pi Beta Phi. And on campus, I was involved with the homecoming team, all of these things. And I got really, really interested in sales and hospitality through that. I just really fell into all of it. And then my first internship when I was in college was for this, it was called Rally by the River. And they brought in like D-list classic rock bands. And, I was an intern. I had to do everything, right? So I had to read the band writer and I had to convince speakers to go to certain places they didn't want to go because they wanted to go later, but I had to go earlier. And so that was really my first foray into hospitality and then into the business of sales within the hospitality world. And then it sort of just grew from there. Eventually I got a job at a hotel and it all grew from there. But I think every sales opportunity I had was accidental. And some of them I hated and some of them I loved, but the ones I hated, I just tried to think about, okay, what am I learning from this experience? Even about what I like and what I don't like. I think, that was my first sales job was a printing business. And I hated what I was selling. I hated it so bad. But what I learned from that experience from going through some sales training was that I was really good at improvising and I was really good at making presentations. but I couldn't do a good job at making presentations or improvising if I didn't love the product. So, I think all along the way, I've learned some things about myself and fallen into a bunch of things along the way too.
Yeah, that's an important lesson too. You have to embrace what it is that you sell, the products or services that you sell. A lot of people would say that hospitality has some of the best sales training, at least they used to. I'm sure they probably still do. But for those of us that have been around either great restaurants or great hotels, I mean, there's amazing programs that have been in play. And I love it when people come into, say, technology sales or something else that have a strong hospitality background, because that they know how to treat customers and how to focus on the buyer, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, my first sales training was actually for that printing business. And they had a really awesome training program. It was a Xerox type business. It was Icon Office Solutions. And that's where I learned. Yeah. Do you remember that? That was so long ago.
I did.
And I wasn't selling machines. I was actually selling like print projects. Like we did Victoria's Secret catalog. This was 25 years ago. So I'm hoping I'm not sparing any trade secrets. But so, that was the training there. That's where they taught how to ask open-ended questions. And I remember that clicked in with me. I was like, whoa, what a difference you feel when you say, do you want to do this versus how can we do this? I just remember that attached to me. And then when I came to the hotel side, the negotiation training, I worked for Starwood, and then they did a really good job. Hard Rock Hotels, Caesars Entertainment, all of the training about LEAP. Remember LEAP? Listen, empathize, ask. I still use that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think the training's good. And then in my coaching, I steal a little bit from everything, every training class I ever went to, because a lot of it is still relatable and practical.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned in the book, and I certainly believe, you said you collect people, and I've been saying that for years. I'm a people collector. I'm a people collector, but I'm a people collector. And you just never know when one connection is, you'll think of someone, you probably do the same thing. I'll think of somebody like, oh, I met that person last year and they do that one thing that this person I'm meeting right now, I need to tell. In fact, I told you about someone right before we started recording that I think
I wrote it down.
And that's what I do. And I imagine you do the same thing, right?
I 100% do the same thing, because I think you never know if somebody's eventually going to be your client or your boss or your sister-in-law or your neighbor. You never know. So I try and go about everything with kindness and positivity and looking for the good, even in the most painful situations. I think we all, especially being a woman in business, I think we can find ourselves in really painful situations. I was just on a call yesterday. I have a group of women. I have all these different groups of women we have calls with, but yesterday, one woman was talking about how she's just about to finish a project and she's going to stay at the same company, but the project's been really painful. And how can she stay motivated for the next 2 weeks without damaging her reputation? And, she just talked about she's the only woman on the team and how everybody's at different ages and no one quite understands her. And I think as the women, as we rallied around her on that call, our message was just stay positive, look for the good, go out on top, and just know that you're going to collect these people and they're also going to collect you. You may not think they like you, but they probably respect you. So, just know you're going to be collecting each other. So I agree with that for sure.
Yeah. And that developing and building relationships takes time. So the people that connect with you on LinkedIn and then they immediately pitch you. So unlike a lot of people, I love connecting with salespeople because that's our thing, right? That's what we do. I'm around sales every day, all day long. And so I love connecting with salespeople, but the moment someone immediately pitches me, I try to educate them. I'll say, really, do you have any idea of what I do? Like, I could amplify what you're talking about way more than I could buy something from you. And if you even took a moment to know, but a lot of people do automated bots and things like that. So they don't even, and they'll say, oh, my admin, my assistants did this or that. And so sometimes I'll cut people a break. I don't embarrass people. I don't share it publicly that this is, the worst message I got, but I really try to help educate people to say, that's not what you do. If your boss taught you to do that, you should go somewhere else because that's not how we sell. And that's not how you build relationships. Do you find that happening a lot too?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm a buyer now. So I interact with so many salespeople on a daily basis. And there's so many great ones and there's a lot of bad ones too. So, but I've actually heard a term the other day for that on LinkedIn. When you connect with somebody and then you instantly get that message, somebody called it being pitch slapped.
Right.
I love that. I thought that was such a, because that's exactly what it is. You get excited about a connection, then you get this stupid automated email. I'm like, oh, enough of that.
Yeah, it's like,
But I do find that. And I think really I think it's patience. I think when I was younger, going to networking events, I was handing out business cards like candy. And I was that annoying salesperson, like, here you go, here you go. And now I make a practice of, I don't give anybody my business card unless they ask.
yeah.
And, if I find that somebody's interesting and there may be something for us, but I don't know what that is, then I'll ask like, hey, can we connect? I don't know what we would work on together, but I really liked our conversation. But, early on, I think I relate that to being like a younger junior salesperson and you got to try, and there's nothing wrong with that too. You have to try everything because that's how you find your voice. Right. And pitch slapping does work for a bunch of people. I just didn't, that's not my personality. That's not how I'm wired. But I do find I find a lot of that kind of stuff coming out. And then I also, I try in a really graceful way on my TikTok page. If I'm experiencing something frustrating in the sales process from salespeople, I'll make a TikTok about it where I'm like, you got to save your customers time or something, where in my head, I like, salespeople are making me crazy today, but I'm trying making a positive out of it so I can put the good juju out there in the world.
Yeah. Years ago, that's what I did with my blog. I would have some weird encounter with, I remember I went on a call with someone, an association wanted me to come talk to their main salesperson and help her sell more. And I met with her and the first thing she said is, I hate using the telephone. And I'm like, okay.
How's this going to work?
But yeah. So you want to meet everybody in person. And she actually did a pretty good job doing that back when we had, all the many, many meetings and events going on. But I would blog about that just because it was so funny. And now TikTok is such a much more creative platform to do that. So that's great. So do you have any sense of why there aren't more women in some of the industries outside of hospitality that are just traditionally men? You probably run into a lot of men, the events where there are salespeople. I know marketing people tend to be more women, but a lot of male sellers out there. And what do you think?
I think that there is, like you said, sales is a dirty word. And sometimes there's a bravado associated with it. And so there's more of a desire for men sometimes to go out and want to be a salesperson. There's less of a desire sometimes. And again, I don't want to generalize because I've never felt this. Like for me, I've never felt like I don't want to do that. It's just been in me. But I will say if people are, like my first job, I wanted to be an educator. I think women and men tend to look at how they want to be differently based on their environmental influences, right? Like women aren't supposed to be assertive or aggressive, and men are rewarded for that. And I think now it's so much different now for sure than it was when you and I were coming up, where women are rewarded, like ask for what you want, be upfront. And I think that goes with the sales, but I think we just have to continue as we build the bench of the sales leaders of the future. I think we just have to continue to show the beautiful benefits of a life in sales, or not, we're all selling. All these awesome entrepreneurs that have come out of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And help them be like, you are the best inventor and you've got to work on your salespersonship because this is going to help get your invention to the world that helps people. So I think, if we can change the story around a little bit to make people understand like this is going to be helping people, than the salesman.
It's a helping profession. It's
Yeah.
a helping profession. I was a teacher before I became a salesperson.
Yeah.
And once you realize that you're not, it's not about tricking people or,
Yeah.
eliminate. I did work for a company once. Funny enough, it was a copier business. I did it for a very short time. It was after I left selling computers and technology, and they were tricking people at this company.
Mm.
And it wasn't the company you mentioned. It was a little company in Seattle. And they would come back to the office and laugh about how they talked somebody into, paying per, some cost per copy thing instead of some other way and getting much more margin. And I just thought, it's just disgusting. Like
It's bad. That's bad juju. Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah, I had a family member several years ago, and he just exudes like a relationship builder to me. And he was coming out of college, trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life, and I was like, "What would you consider sales? Like, why wouldn't you consider sales?" And he said, "I'm not that much of a BSer." And I was like, well, let's dig into that. Where does that come from? And it came from his dad, and that's what it was. And I was like, listen, salespeople are not BSers. Salespeople are educators and they're listeners and they're problem solvers. But I think that goes back to why more men or why women or what's cringy. I do think, the way salespeople are portrayed on TV, the way salespeople are portrayed in some industries like that, that example that you gave, there are just some bad apples. I mean, that's just in every industry. And unfortunately, we remember the bad more than we remember the good. So we just have to keep reinforcing the good, I think.
Yeah, and I will tell women that are in college or even high school, young women, I'll say, even if you did a business to business sales role for 2 years and, kind of dealt with learning about rejection and, learning about really embracing your product and focusing on the buyer. If you did that for 2 years, you could do one of two things. One is you could ultimately, if and when you became an entrepreneur, had your own business, you'll be able to make it grow, because a lot of entrepreneurs have to go back to corporate because they can't sell. They don't know how to sell. And the other thing is, if you stayed in a corporate role, you could rise through the ranks because you understand how to sell yourself. And there's really no downside to having a couple of years of selling.
There's no downside to having that skill set. My husband and I talk about this all the time. He's in finance. He's exactly what you would think of finance. He is like Mr. Spreadsheet. He can build any model. He's really good at it. He's been doing it a long time. He's not a salesperson. He's the guy when we have the garage sale that if somebody wants to buy something, like they want to negotiate, he comes running inside. He's like, they don't want to negotiate. But, something that we've talked about over time is where he's improving his skill set over the last 4 or 5 years is even in finance, at this high level of finance, there are so many concepts that he has to sell internally to people on his leadership team or people cross departments, where having that selling skill set will help you. It really doesn't matter what role you have. Having that selling skill set helps you in every job you have, whether you're a teacher or a nurse or a finance person or whatever. I mean, you just have to really look at how that helps you. And if you don't have, then you're just going to be like everybody else. If you do have it, it's a differentiator that will help you give yourself more value in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did you learn about yourself writing the book?
At the beginning of it, I wasn't the best time manager. And at the end of this, I rock my time. I'm so good at buckets of time now, but because I work a full-time job, and I have a life and I have a dog and a husband and, family and stuff. When you write a book, you really have to commit and dedicate to it. So at the beginning of the times, Wednesday was my writing day. And, once you get in and out of, and I'm sure, you know this too, you get into creative space, you can't jump in and out. You can't do your normal job and then write. You have to just stay in that space so you can let those words just roll off the page or get deeper with the concepts or the research. So Wednesday was my writing days. And then that didn't work because it was in the middle of the week. So then Friday were my writing days and that didn't work. And eventually it was 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning every day were my writing and organizing days for the book. And that worked. And I learned I'm a morning person through and through. I knew that, but I am most productive between like 4:45 a.m. And that sounds crazy. It's just how my body works until 3 p.m. After that, I'm scrambled eggs. Now I can do some tasks after 3 o'clock, but I'm not at my creative best after 3.
Yeah.
So I learned about time management for sure. And that I can get so much more done if I focus on buckets of time. And then I also learned what my most productive time of the day is when I was writing.
Were you surprised that you had so many stories about sales? Because you do share a lot of stories in here, which I really like.
It's sales tales. It's all the tales.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was surprised. I think, when you do your outline for the book, you know you're going to tell some of those key stories, right? But then when you actually start putting them on paper, then my brain was just flooded with all these other memories I had buried or not thought about. And I was like, oh, there's that story and there's that story. So that kind of surprised me. And I was just talking, I can't remember who I was talking with a colleague the other day. And they were talking about how they were just mentally kind of stuck in a place and they just kind of felt heavy and they were just there for like 4 days or so. And it had nothing to do with writing or business or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I relate to that because that's how it was in the book. Like some of these stories I wrote about were from like 1998. And you get back into that mode of like, gosh, I was 22 years old in 1998. And what was I doing with my life at that time? And who were my boyfriends? Who were my friends? What was I doing at night? You get in that space and there is a little bit of a fog and it's sort of hard to get out of that because you're reliving a lot of your past. Some of it's good and some of it is sad, and you're just working through that. So there was some of that too. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, I am going to recommend that people check it out. Sales Skills, The Hustle, Humor, and Lessons from a Life in Sales.
Thank you.
Written by Mandi Graziano. And we see that venues are opening up again. I mean, this is May 2022 when we're recording. And I mean, I still have people questioning going to an event in the fall, but you're booking stuff and you're booking it out for years, right?
Yeah, 2028. Yeah, I have a site inspection next week for a program in 2028.
Wow.
But yeah, venues are open. In fact, yesterday in San Francisco, the very last large hotel in San Francisco, Park 55, reopened its doors after being closed for 2 years.
Wow.
So like things like that are happening. Yeah, I'm busy right now booking conferences. It's endless days right now. So meetings are happening. Right before I was on a call with you, I was on a call with a group of hospitality people that are heading to Chicago for the National Restaurant Association event that, it's a huge, one of the largest conventions in Chicago that hasn't happened in 2 or 3 years. And so people want to see each other and they want to connect. And right now, I will tell you this because I did a lot of meetings during COVID too, like meetings in the bubble.
Yeah.
This is not the venues or the conference organizers' first rodeo. They have so many good systems in place right now to keep travelers and attendees safe and healthy.
Yeah.
That it's probably the safest time to go to a conference right now because health is very much on the forefront. There's people doing tests. People are still, it's not mandated, but a lot of people are still wearing masks at conferences and on airplanes. So it's a really good time to return to in-person live events. Just be smart about it.
Yeah, it is. And I echo that too. I'm an extrovert, so it's been hard, hanging indoors for a lot. And I have gone to events over the last number of months, last year, pretty much, not a lot, but some, and some were really weird, but it's getting better now. So I encourage people to, dip your toe in the water.
Yeah. How was it for you? Like what made the events that you went to weird or what made them good for you? I'm just curious.
When everything was like all wrapped in plastic and, I was at an event at a casino in Boston and the Encore, and all the restaurants were closed in the building, but the venue, our conference was going on. It was just weird that you couldn't really do anything. Well, because it's a bit remote and everything was like wrapped in plastic. And I don't know, it just felt it was hard. People were all masked. Now people are masked off, and generally speaking, not always, but I don't know. I love the people piece and being in person. I'm okay to do a blended approach, and I don't have to go to as many events as I probably used to. I know meeting planners and everybody else wants us to, so want us to get all back 100%, but it'll be interesting. It's a gradual shift, I think, for a lot of people.
And I think the other thing too is, as much as meeting planners want people to go back to meetings, I also think, and this is for everybody, the attendee or the planner or just the CEO or the college student, just everybody think about meetings, is everybody comes at this from a different space. And just remembering, don't assume anything. Do not assume everybody wants to go back. Don't assume people don't want to go back. Just find out where everybody is and meet them right there, and use that as a baseline to build that relationship, and just be really conscious of your surroundings. People may or may not want to shake your hand. People may or may not want to hug you. People may or may not want to stand close. People might just want to just hug and high five all over you, So I just think like that whole proceeding with caution, just be really thoughtful. Be real thoughtful about your human interactions right now, and connected for sure.
That's great. Well, thank you for writing a great book. And I encourage people to check out Sales Tales, Mandi Graziano. Thank you for being a guest, and we'll look forward to seeing more people reading it. And take your picture if you have the book, do a selfie and post it so Mandy can see it, especially if you listen to our podcast. Thank you.
I share all of those. So yes, for sure, especially with the animals, people that post with their dogs and cats.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's a challenge then. That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations with Women in Sales. You can find all of our episodes at womensalespros.com/podcast. Help us spread the word, and let's change the face of B2B sales.